At 7:42 that evening, our doorbell cam caught it all, an HOA security guard stepping out, unclipping his holster and raising a gun toward my wife at the entry gate. No warning, no words, just cold metal. The board had just approved more patrol coverage, but nothing in the bylaws ever allowed armed enforcement. That's when the 911 clock started, ticking, and whispers spread faster than sirens. By sunrise, there was a case number, censored messages, and a community divided in two. This wasn't about mailboxes or lawn lengths. It was about a boundary you never cross. Don't blink. The ending explains how one reckless act fractured an entire neighborhood. Before that holster shifted, life here ran on autopilot. The cul-de-sacs were routine. The newsletters, predictable. The pool rules, unchanged. Everyone followed a quiet rhythm. Morning jogs by the pond, packages lined neatly on porches, weekend fence repairs that always got postponed. My wife kept the kind of mental checklist only someone married to a first responder would. Flashlights charged, gate codes updated, files in order. The HOA was background noise, tucked between holiday decor notices, parking reminders, and speed bumps that jostled coffee cups. Then came the break. A string of small thefts shattered the calm. The board filled its meetings with talk of safety measures, posted surveys about cameras, and floated the idea of contracting a private patrol. That's when things changed. A community watch with bright safety vests, a borrowed radar display, and official-sounding phrases that made the newsletter feel more like a memo from authority. The manager called it visibility. The meeting notes called it presence. The insurance company had a different term, one buried in clauses we wouldn't read until much later. The faces behind those reflective vests were familiar. Retirees, restless, eager to feel useful. Most waved, smiled, and moved along. One didn't. He was the loud one at every meeting, arguing about garbage bins and porch lights, quoting bylaws he never actually read. Soon he began hanging around the front gate at dusk, jotting down license plates like someone had hired him for a job only he knew existed. When the board approved more patrol coverage, his vest suddenly included a utility belt, and that belt came with a holster. The covenant spelled out what the HOA could control: fences, paint colors, lawns. What they didn't spell out was how far a volunteer could go when armed and acting under the neighborhood's name. We didn't expect to learn the answer from a muzzle caught in a frame glowing with a porch, light halo, and a timestamp. But that's how ordinary life ended. Not with a letter in the mailbox, but with a hand reaching for leather and a camera that never blinked. The footage lasted seconds. My wife pulled up to the gate, fob in hand. The volunteer stepped from the shadows, and a pistol rose from its holster like the world had suddenly lost its script. The doorbell alert hit my phone instantly. I tapped the thumbnail, and time seemed to collapse into silence. Her posture braced. His arm extended, the gate half open, the barrel aimed where a heartbeat lives. The 911 log marked the call at 7:43 p.m. His name went into the dispatcher's notes beside. 3 words that rewrote everything. Brandishing a weapon. He never pulled the trigger. He didn't have to pull the trigger. The moment alone did the damage. When officers arrived, they broke the scene down into statements, angles, and evidence tags. They photographed the holster, recorded the serial number, and noted the lack of any active security license. The incident report was clinical. No physical assault, no verbal threat, just a weapon displayed in a way any reasonable person would find alarming. My wife described the sequence with the precision of someone used to documenting trauma. The officers logged the doorbell footage timestamps, copied the clips, and issued a case number. The gun stayed in his possession, but the paperwork carried a recommendation. By midnight, the HOA website lit up. The board posted a short note about an incident during community patrol. That was all it took for gossip to outrun truth. Some neighbors called it vigilance. Others called it impersonation. The bylaws didn't back either version. By dawn, a violation notice appeared in our inbox, confrontation at gate, complete with a fine schedule. The irony stung. I pulled up the covenants. The power to hire licensed security, yes. The power to make rules, yes. But nowhere did it authorize volunteers to patrol with weapons. That's when the insurance file, something no one had thought about, suddenly mattered. Through a neighbor on the finance committee, an email surfaced later that week. The association's insurer had specifically forbidden coverage for any volunteer patrol carrying firearms. The board had either missed it or hoped we would. The day we filed our petition for a special meeting, another message hit the portal. This one threatened my husband, Alan, with penalties if the incident fine wasn't paid. A line had been crossed twice, once at the gate and once online. We retained counsel. A letter on firm stationery went out, demanding that the association preserve all records and rescind the fine. The tone changed immediately. The manager went silent. The next meeting's agenda listed security measures update, but gave no detail. Between that video clip and the coming court date, life went on, quietly suspended. With every coffee run, dog walk, and sunset stroll shadowed by the low hum of whatever decision might come next. My wife stopped using the gate after dark. Neighbors changed their walking routes. The man in the vest still stood at the corner as if claiming his post. And in that gray space between what the HOA was permitted to do and what it had quietly allowed, tension gathered like humidity before a storm. We sent a certified letter to the property manager. And the board, citing the police report, the bylaw sections, and the insurance exclusion, we invoked the clause that allowed 10% of homeowners to demand a special meeting. Folding tables appeared beneath carport awnings as we gathered signatures. People who had never attended a single meeting came forward, pens trembling. They'd watched the footage. They had kids who biked to the pool. The board retreated behind closed doors, calling it a potential legal matter. Meanwhile, the patrol kept showing up, vest fitted, holster firm, stance unbroken. The police file shifted from pending to forwarded, now sitting with the district attorney's intake desk. Screenshots of the case tracker started spreading through private neighborhood group chats. Supporters of the patrol claimed he was keeping the peace. The rest of us saw what couldn't be unseen. The HOA had let a neighbor turn a handbook into a badge. Two threads collided in the same week, the special meeting. We'd forced with our petition and a magistrate hearing for a civil protective order. The meeting came first. Folding chairs filled a multi-purpose hall. The board table sat elevated on a low stage, under a calm so thin it might crack. Attendance exceeded capacity. Even the quiet families showed up. The manager began with a prepared statement, something about ongoing safety efforts and miscommunications. Then came the motion everyone had been waiting for, landing with the thud of a dropped wrench. A proposal to suspend the volunteer patrol program pending review. The room froze in a collective inhale. The board split straight down the middle. One director tried to pivot to budget matters, but hands shot up across the room before he could speak. The petitioner's representative stepped to the microphone. He didn't give a speech. He simply pressed play. The footage appeared on the projector wall. No commentary, no labels. Just the timestamp, the gate light, the reflective vest, the holster, and a gun slowly lifting toward a driver who never moved. The reaction was instant, a single ripple through the crowd. Gasps, then stillness. The faces that had come skeptical were suddenly pale. The clip ended. The image froze. The vote followed. Motion passed, 4-1. It felt like air returning after pressure, but only halfway. The next stop was the courtroom. The question wasn't theoretical anymore. The statute on brandishing was written in black and white. The judge went down the list, one element at a time. The officer's report, the doorbell footage, affidavits from two witnesses who'd seen the moment at the gate. Together, they drew a clean, unbroken line. The volunteer's attorney called it alertness. Our counsel called it a threat. The judge called it law. The ruling barred the volunteer from coming near our home and from carrying any weapon while doing anything that could appear connected to the HOA. It also cautioned the board about liability, what happens when a neighborhood confuses a neighbor for an enforcer. Word spread before the clerk's stamp even dried. Before the sun went down, the board issued an emergency statement, halting the patrol program, canceling the fines tied to the gate incident, and announcing an independent review of all security procedures. The district attorney's office advanced the case from intake to formal review. The room where that footage had played still carried the smell of coffee and nerves. A man who once craved authority had become a warning. The gavel never struck. It didn't have to. The order had already said everything. By month's end, the HOA's website looked different. The patrol initiative was dissolved. A new rule barred volunteers from carrying firearms while doing anything. On behalf of the association, if security was ever needed again, it would be licensed, insured, and on contract. The insurer's memo, once buried in an inbox, was now posted. In the public documents section, partially redacted but impossible to miss, the board withdrew the lien threat and erased our fine, leaving a short note in the ledger marking it cleared. The volunteer stepped down from all committee roles and kept his court-ordered distance. The district attorney filed a misdemeanor charge for brandishing. There was no drama, just a quiet hearing, a plea to a reduced count, and conditions that included a safety course and a set. Period without firearm possession. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like mending something that had cracked. Neighbors who once defended him stopped calling it a misunderstanding. The quiet ones began showing up to meetings. The finance report gained a new budget line for licensed security during holidays. The meeting minutes grew sharper, less vague. And that bylaw clause about calling special meetings, once buried in the back of a binder, moved to the front of everyone's mind. Home never felt quite the same again. The porch lights stretched across the driveway, catching the same angle that once froze in my mind the shape of a gun held level at the chest. My wife still parked beneath the street lamp. Then she laughed at the habit and decided to keep it. We added another camera, and to our surprise, finally slept through the night. Trust didn't snap back overnight. It healed like a broken bone, stronger where it mended, sensitive when pressure returned. The lesson was both plain and uneasy. A community can enforce paint colors and picket heights. What it cannot do is invent authority and call it protection. Power isn't a reflective vest. It's a contract, a credential, a responsibility bound by law. If a homeowner's board wants enforcement, it must hire it, train it, insure it, and own its consequences. If a neighbor wants to help, it cannot be with a gun in the dark and a patch that says patrol. If you live under an association, read your covenants. Learn your bylaws. Ask who is truly authorized to act. If you serve on a board, treat safety as a matter of law, not performance. And if your neighborhood ever blurs that boundary, remember the moment that redrew ours, a lens that never blinked, and a community that finally opened its eyes. If this story resonates, share it with someone on your street. Add your own experience below. More true HOA stories are coming, with the records to prove them.